Yo, what's going on, guys? Today we'll be going over the rise and fall of Clash Royale Esports.
We're going to be just going over every year from 2016 to 2024 and breaking it down. So what CRL is it's the official esports league of Clash Royale. It's just a place where players have the chance to earn a lot of money, and it's just a thing because it's a way for Clash Royale to get their community engaged, and also kind of just a way for pro players and top players to have something to do still in the game, even if their account is already maxed out or they're already pretty accomplished. Alright, so to start off, we have 2016. In 2016, there wasn't too much going on because Clash Royale was really just starting out. Clash Royale was created in 2016, so there wasn't really going to be too much, but there were a few tournaments. CRL wasn't actually formed yet in 2016, but there was this Shanghai tournament. It was some tournament where I think the prize pool was just about $100,000, something just under that, so actually some pretty good money already there on the line. And one of the most notable tournaments in 2016 was the Helsinki tournament. Basically, players took part in this ladder event similar to an in-game tournament, and basically 8 players qualified to the final bracket, which was in person. And they took part in this single elimination bracket, so basically if they lost once, they would get out, and there were best of 5 matches. It's kind of interesting because nowadays it's quite a bit different. Instead of being like a best of 5, it's actually a best of 3, and it's also duels format to where you can only play each card once in the entire best of 3. And yeah, someone named Jason ended up winning the Helsinki tournament, which had a $15,000 prize pool. Honestly, not bad, but definitely not nearly as much as there is today.
In 2017, the Clash Royale League had officially started. They started out with the Crown Championship, and basically it was a 16-player tournament in it where a player named Sergio Ramos ended up winning everything. It was the biggest mobile esports event in history, and it was a super big step for Supercell as a whole because I guess it was the first major tournament, I guess, that could be compared to other tournaments and other esports and stuff like that. It was just a huge event for mobile esports in general, and it kind of put Supercell on the map as someone who can make great esports events, big esports events, and you get a ton of viewership, kind of like other esports events. But the main thing here was that it was a mobile esports event, so it was very good, and I feel like that really started Clash Royale Esports as a whole because they saw the great viewership, and with the great viewership, they knew that they could make this into something bigger, better, and real.
Yeah, I feel like back in 2016, the viewership, or not 2016, but 2017, I feel like the viewership was really insane back then. I'm not exactly sure what the numbers were, but I'm definitely sure that it's a lot higher than the viewership is today for Clash Royale Esports because, every once in a while on YouTube, not very often, but sometimes I'll just get suggested, some very old clip of some old games from, 2017 or so, at that time, and they just have, millions of views, which is even more views than the World Finals in 2023, for example, got. I think in 2023, the World Finals got 1 million views for each day, but I saw some just random clip of some 2017 games that got 4.2 million views, and I think there's a ton of clips like that out there. So yeah, 2017, definitely a very successful launch for CRL. And also another thing in 2017 was the King's Cup. It was a very interesting tournament where basically on each team, there were different teams, and each team had 3 players. And basically on all of those teams, there was one YouTuber, 1 pro player, and 1 player who qualified. Honestly, it was a very interesting competition. I do remember watching it myself, and I was rooting for Viva La Sparky, that team. And yeah, it was very interesting, just kind of something a bit out of the box compared to what you would normally see.
I think that tournament was also very important for the development of Clash Royale League. I didn't even start playing the game until the end of 2018 or right at the beginning of 2019. I think I started in December 2018, and I had already heard about the tournament, and I knew about the tournament even 2 years later, nearly 2 years later, a year and a half later, I already had heard about the tournament and I already knew what it was. Getting those kind of views on a mobile esport championship or event, it wasn't even for that much money, I'm pretty sure, and I just think it's very important for that esport when you're getting that many views, you're getting that much recognition from people who play the game, from people who don't play the game or just started playing the game. It's very, very good, and it definitely helped Clash Royale Esports out a lot in becoming what once was and what it is today and stuff like that.
All right, so moving on to 2018. 2018 was honestly a super big year for Clash Royale. They did change the format a bit because in 2017 and 2016 a little bit, it was more of like a single player format. No teams or anything like that. But yeah, moving on to 2018, teams did start to become a part of the Clash Royale League. Like big names such as, Team Liquid, Misfits, and everything like that were a part of it. And that really helped because they got a lot of money into the league. Like a lot of the players had these contracts, which could really, secure them a decent financial sitting for being a pro player in Clash Royale. And I think each team had about 4 to 5 players, and there are also a lot of cool things like new game modes being introduced into Clash Royale League, such as King of the Hill, 2v2, that kind of stuff, which was really fun for the players and the audience. The one major downside, though, is that it was pretty hard to get into the league. There were certain things like the 20-win challenge, which I think helped teams find certain players who might be a good fit for the team, but a lot of the time, what ended up happening is that a lot of the deserving players who should have been in the league just weren't in the league because they didn't have good connections and stuff like that. Like, a lot of the time, certain teams would pick to add an additional player who they knew well or was like a good friend of theirs rather than someone who was actually maybe more deserving of it. And also another big issue is that a lot of the time, like say there was a team of a bunch of players all with the same nationality, and then another player could join who was a different nationality. They might not want to accept that player because then it would be kind of like hard to communicate if they didn't speak the same language or stuff like that. So there definitely were some barriers with that.
I think that was a very big problem in the early stages of Clash Royale League from 2018 to 2020, where there was specific teams. I'm not going to like say out names because it doesn't really matter, but there were specific teams of certain nationalities that would only accept that nationality, no questions asked. I think it's the same in some other sports, but it just made for like a very gate-kept system where if you were good enough but weren't in the right nationality, you didn't have a chance to play. Because let's say, for example, this team was full, that team was full, and there was one team who had some spots left because there was a limited amount of teams in the Clash Royale League. I think there was about like 6 to 8 teams in the Clash Royale League, and once you had those teams set, those were the teams for the entire season of Clash Royale League. You couldn't really pick up any players in the middle of the year. You kind of had to pick them up in like very specific periods. So once the final roster change was there, you could never change your roster anymore. So if the main teams, I guess, that accepted any nationality already had their full roster set out, you would have zero chance of joining a nationality restricted team, even if you were better than all of the people on that team, because they would only accept a specific nationality, which I find it very unfair, and it's not like a very good system on determining who the best players are and getting the rightly deserving players on a specific team on like and giving them a chance to compete, because it was kind of walled behind where you were from, where you lived, and I feel like that's like the opposite of what esports is, and it made it for like a very weird playing experience knowing that you couldn't play on a specific team, so you would have to hope to get messaged by specific teams.
Yeah, and one other thing is that I believe during that time you had to be 18 years or older to play in Clash Royale League, and I'm pretty sure later they reduced it to 16 years old, but I'm pretty sure that only happened in later years, like I think 2021 and after. Not 100% sure on that, but yeah, definitely a lot of players also were just too young because the majority of Clash Royale's player base is a little bit on the younger side. Maybe by now, though, a lot of them have gotten a little bit older.
That's also a very great point with the age restrictions as well. You had to be 18 or older to play in the Clash Royale League because in 2019, it was actually played in person. Everything was played in person. I think 2018, everything was played in person as well. So you had to be there officially. And
Yeah.
if you were under 18, you'd have to drop out of school because back then online schooling wasn't really a thing. So you'd be dropping out of school to play Clash Royale. So they kind of just made it so you had to be 18. So you'd be finished high school at least. And everything would be kind of good in that kind of sense.
Yeah, and so in 2018, at the end of the year, Nova Esports ended up becoming the champion. I remember they had a ton of good players there. They had like, I don't even know if most of the people know who the pro players were back then, but they had people like Little Chen, Aurora, and stuff like that. Yeah, and anyways, so moving on to 2019, I feel like 2019 was somewhat similar to 2018. A lot of similar stuff was happening. I'm sure there were quite a few competitions and stuff like that, and the team format was still probably relatively the same. Also, quite a few new teams started to enter the scene as well.
In 2019, it was probably the best year in history for Clash Royale Esports in terms of getting, I'm not sure about viewership, but in terms of deserving players being in the competitions, great teams being played, amazing gameplay, new faces shining, like very deserving players shining. I feel like a lot of the restrictions were kind of being like, I guess, overthrown. Like there weren't like even though there was like the 18 age rule, I feel like a lot of the deserving players were there, and it was a very great competition. You had your big names that are known now as some of the greats. You had like Surgical Goblin, you had Morton, you had other famous players like that, Sergio Ramos. I think you had Adrian Piedra in there as well. You just had a great pool of players playing great Clash Royale, and it made for a very great viewing experience. But more importantly, because you had already been in teams for a year, you kind of got to know the players as a person. You got like, instead of rooting for a team, maybe you were rooting for a player. You had Morton. The German players, the Morton fans were rooting for Morton, OP Sam, and their favorite players, SK Gaming. Then you had all the Surgical Goblin fans hoping that he would win. So these players kind of built their own personality in the Clash Royale Esports, and you had people to root for, and it made it a way better experience where you were rooting for players and teams instead of just like kind of just watching to watch. You kind of had something to watch for now. You were watching to see your favorite player win, your favorite team win, and you just got to know some of these players on a little bit more of a personal level, and I think they did great in that aspect. And on the more competitive side, I think we had the most competitive season that we've ever seen in Clash Royale history in terms of esports, where you had a very, very close playoffs where only 4 teams made it. The only teams that were really important to making it were SK Gaming and Team Liquid. You actually did have this one very strange thing going on though. Because it was played in the United States, you had to get a visa approved to be able to attend in the World Finals, right? The World Finals, SK Gaming versus Team Liquid. Because of that, you had to get a visa. You had to be able to attend there in person to play on the main stage to enforce fair play and other things like that. So there was a lot of complications with that. Team Liquid star player Surgical Goblin got his visa approved maybe 2 days before the competition. Everyone thought that he might not be able to play in the competition because of not being able to be approved into coming into the country of the United States. And there was a lot of drama around that, and that made for a crazy story of him actually winning the World Finals. Team Liquid did win the World Finals with the unarguable best Clash Royale game in history. Surgical Goblin versus SK Morton for the final game. Winner takes everything. Surgical Goblin beats Morton by everyone knows 1 HP, and I think that is the most viewed Clash Royale video and game of all time. It was a crazy game,
Yeah.
and made for a lot of great moments, and it was just a great event.
Yeah, 2019 was amazing. Yeah, so many crazy moments in there. And so moving on to 2020, 2020 was definitely a very interesting year. One of the big things was the fact that COVID happened in 2020, maybe about like April 2020, I think, something around there. So actually the Clash Royale League World Finals ended up having to be played online, and a lot of the stuff that year just had to be online instead of in person, like it normally was. And so in 2020, there was actually quite a few new names showing up there, like even Mohamed Light. I think he just started playing competitively at that time. He joined this organization called Kicks, and there were like a lot of really good players too. Like also Mugi was on Ponos, I think it was, and also Ruben was on Team Queso. So there was like 3 really big teams there with 3 of the best players. I mean, I think at the time people didn't really know that Mohamed Light was very good because I guess he was still just getting into his rhythm and stuff like that. But yeah, I feel like Ryley probably knows a lot more about the year than me, to be honest. I know a lot more about like 2021, 2022, and after that. But yeah, I'll give it to Ryley for the rest of it.
I feel like 2020 lived up to the hype of 2019. You had these very big stars like Surgical Goblin, Ruben, who was a big name, widely considered the best player in the world at this time. But most importantly, you had Mugi. This was Mugi's first year competing in Clash Royale League, because before he was only 15 years old and he was unable to play. Mugi announced that he would officially be on Ponos, which was, I think, the biggest Clash Royale esports news that wasn't like a win or a match win of all time. Everyone knew him as probably the best player, one of the best players in the world, one of the greatest, but he was unable to play. People were seeing him as like, it was very sad he wasn't able to play, but because the age in 2020 got turned down to 16, more people were able to play, and there was these crazy news and there was this crazy announcement that Mugi would be playing. And you also had the debut of people like Mohamed Light, as we now see as one of the greatest, if not the greatest of all time, and Mugi as well. You see these like the greats of the game currently were just starting out in 2020, but because Mugi was already widely regarded as the best player, if not one of the best players in the world at this time, everyone was excited, and people thought Mugi would be the one to take it all because he was on a Japan team called Ponos, and he was with a bunch of other Japanese players, but it was a crazy final. This was the first year we didn't play in person because of COVID-19, the lockdown and the restrictions. We ended up playing online, and it was kind of crazy, honestly, but in the end, Ruben won. Ruben cemented himself as the best player of the year, even though I think Mugi did get some type of MVP rewards. He did very well, but Ruben pretty much carried his team on his back. I'm not going to lie. I remember everyone saying that Ruben single handedly won on his own in 2020, other than the 2v2 section, of course, because Team Queso did good in their 2v2 section. But in the 1v1s, Ruben had a crazy win rate. He did amazing and kind of cemented himself as one of the best players of all time.
Yeah, I remember one really interesting moment happened. I think it was with one of the Team Queso players, I think named Kuchiku or something like that. I'm pretty sure he went for like an RG in the pocket, or like he misplaced it and it went to the King Tower. I kind of forgot exactly what happened, but I remember people were hating on him pretty big time for that. And also one other small thing I want to just mention is that it was very interesting with the teams format because there was like 2v2 and other stuff like that. So you didn't just want to pick the best players for 1v1. Like I feel like like Mugi's team, for example, they had like quite a few good 2v2 players as well, because even though Mugi was very good in 1v1, I don't know if he was that amazing in 2v2. So it's kind of nice just to have some different dynamics working in there as well. All right, so 2021 was honestly a very big year for CRL. The main change was the fact that it moved from a teams format back to a solo format, kind of like how it was back in 2017. There were a lot of different things like basically teams lost their use in CRL, but there were still a few teams back in 2021 kind of just in there for some recognition. Like even I was on a team at that time in 2021, and basically what they would do is that they would pay you every single month a certain salary, and then in return you would give them a portion of your winnings, a percent of your winnings, and usually you would come up with a pretty good profit in the end from it, and what they would get is some recognition and stuff like that. And there was a lot of backlash from people. I feel like the format itself was actually quite nice at that time, but people just really missed the team format, I guess because they really enjoyed the viewing experience of a team format. And yeah, in the solo experience, you just didn't have quite the same thing. So because of that, I think the viewership was quite a bit lower in 2021. And basically how it worked in 2021 was that you would play in a 1,000 player qualifier, because the top 1,000 players on ladder would then move on to play against each other, and the top 32 from those players would then move on to this next phase. And basically the top 32 players got distributed into 8 groups of 4 players, and whoever finished the number one spot in their respective group would then move on to the top 8, which was the monthly final. And if you got top 32, you would already get $1,000, and you could win up to, I don't know how much money exactly for the whole thing, but I think each month if you won, you would get like over 20 grand or something like that. And basically there was a point system. You get points for how well you finish on ladder each month, and also you get points based on your performance each month in CRL. And basically there would be 24 players who would be guaranteed to qualify to World Finals. Like the top 24 players on the points leaderboard, they would be guaranteed to go to World Finals. And after that, there would be LCQ hosted for the 25th to 56th player. They would basically have to win. If they won 2 duels, they would then qualify to Worlds. So only 8 players from that group of people could qualify to Worlds to make it 32 total. I actually was playing in that myself, and basically I ended up playing this one player. I beat him. Then I faced another player, and I was going to be on call with one of my friends because he was going to help me, just know what to do a little bit, because he was more familiar with the deck that I was playing. I was playing this double spawner deck, which was really good in 2021, but unfortunately I don't know, like somehow the call glitched out or something, and I left it or something like that. And I ended up, unfortunately, being one best of 3 away from qualifying to the World Finals in 2021. Honestly, a lot happened in 2021 because they also changed the format to be duels format. So basically you would play a best of 3 against someone, and you could only use each card one singular time. So a lot of people had to have coaches. I feel like in the earlier years, sometimes people just pick more off of instinct and stuff like that without really thinking too much. But yeah, in 2021, you had to kind of have like a coach and stuff like that. And honestly, even with a coach, I was still repeating cards a ton in the CRL format because it wasn't like in-game duels as it is right now, to where you can have like the deck builder to prevent you from repeating a card. Basically, you just had to make your own thing. And yeah, I repeated cards quite a few times in quite a few important moments. Also in 2021, there were quite a few other competitions, like, I don't know, just a bunch of random things. Like I'm sure like the Queso Cup was there and different things like that. So yeah, there was quite a lot going on there in 2021.
Although in 2021 we did see the best solo format we've ever seen in the qualification phase of the World Finals. I do think that they had the worst World Finals format ever because there was 32 players in the Clash Royale League World Finals 2021. They did this one thing to speed up the process, and basically, normally in these big tournaments, you have a losers bracket, but for the first round of the World Finals, there was no losers bracket. So, top 32 after round one, every player who lost their first round match would be eliminated out of the entire tournament with no chance to bounce back and make a comeback, which, in my opinion, is the worst decision they've ever made in terms of formatting, because you see so many great talents lose out at the beginning. You see so many great matches at the beginning, and it makes for great comeback stories. From like, oh, this guy went from the lowest bracket to the grand final. This guy started in the lower bracket. He wins the whole tournament. Those kind of situations like that, it ruins for that. And I mean, one match isn't everything. That's why you always have the loser bracket, just for that second chance. But there was these three players dominating every single month in the Clash Royale League leading up to the World Finals. It was Mohamed Light, where you kind of see his first big showing on, I guess, like a main stage, because in 2022 he was kind of quiet, but in 2021 he was kind of cementing himself as a great contender to win the World Finals, as well as Mugi and Lucas X Gamer. Those three players, and Igor as well, but mainly Lucas X Gamer, Mohamed, and Mugi, they were widely considered the best three players in the world, and whoever was having the better day was the best player. So leading into the World Finals, we all thought either those three would win or Ruben and Igor. Ruben and Igor were also greats of the game. In 2019, Igor kind of carried his team. In 2020, Ruben kind of carried his team. So those were like the five main contenders to win. But unfortunately, Lucas X Gamer actually lost out in the first round of the 2020 World Finals and got knocked out. And because of the no loser bracket, he was just out. And that was, I think, one of the main reasons Clash Royale League got so much hate for no losers bracket, because one of the star players, best players in the world, had one bad best of three and got kicked out of the entire tournament. And the tournament, other than that, went kind of as expected. You had in the winners bracket semifinals, Igor knocking out Mohamed Light, which was kind of a big upset, but everyone knew how good Igor was, and they weren't really surprised to see him knocking Mohamed Light into the losers bracket. And then in the winners bracket finals, so whoever won that match was guaranteed to be top three, Igor versus Mugi. Mugi ended up winning, and Igor was knocked down to eventually face Mohamed Light again in the top three. Mohamed Light did knock out Igor, getting his revenge on Igor. And it was, as you guys know, Mohamed Light versus Mugi for the grand final. And as everybody now knows, Mugi did win the grand final. And Mugi was the 2021 world champion and started becoming widely recognized as the best Clash Royale player of all time because of that.
Yeah, one really good thing as well in 2021 was that even just for qualifying to World Finals, you would already get a guaranteed $15,000, and also the winner of the entire thing, I'm pretty sure, got $200,000. So Mugi won $200,000 from winning that entire thing. So it was actually like a pretty safe thing compared to nowadays. Like, quite a few people could be pro players and have a good chance to earn a decent chunk of money throughout the year. Alright, so 2022 was quite an interesting year for the Clash Royale League. I think quite a few people hated on the 2021 format, but once we saw the 2022 format, we realized how lucky we were back in 2021, because basically the 2022 format, what happened is that they halved the amount of players who would go to the World Finals. So they made it from 32 players all the way down to 16, and they kind of changed the format as well. They introduced golden tickets, and basically what would happen is that the winner of each competition throughout the year would get a golden ticket, and if you got a golden ticket, you'd instantly be qualified for the World Finals. There were like a bunch of community tournaments throughout the year. There actually wasn't these normal CRL monthly things like we have now, and also, in 2023 and 2021. So there were like all these community tournaments. I was actually doing super well myself throughout the year. I think I qualified to the top 16 of every tournament except one. And basically how the qualifications worked for most of the tournaments were that instead of being like top 1,000 ladder like the monthly things are for CRL, you basically just had to play in these 1,000 player in-game tournaments, and you just kind of qualify through there and go through some different phases and stuff like that. And there were actually no points that year, I'm quite sure. And yeah, what ended up happening later is that they had this thing for kind of like an LCQ, I guess. There was like this in-game tournament hub thing. And basically, I think just a bunch of the top players were in there. I'm pretty sure you qualified for it by getting 20 wins in a 20-win challenge. And basically there were like a ton of players there that I'm pretty sure you would just like search in there, and then you would randomly match some player who you would have to play a duel against, and whoever did the best out of those players would like move on to some other phases. Like I think the top 128 moved on to the next phases, and then eventually, all in all, basically I think 8 players won a golden ticket from that event. So like half of them were from the other events, half were from that. Yeah, I was actually really consistent that year. I unfortunately was on vacation during that tournament thing, and dude, I remember that so clearly. I was like on vacation to the Czech Republic, and I had to stay up until like 2 a.m. every day to play in the tournament hub thing, because I think it was multiple days in a row that I had to play in it. Yeah, it was multiple days in a row. And yeah, unfortunately, I think I just barely didn't end up qualifying. I think I was like a couple spots away from going to the next phase. So yeah, unfortunately, that year ended a little short for me. Man, it was actually it's kind of crazy looking back. I feel like so many times, like pretty much every single year I was playing Clash Royale, I could have got to the World Finals. So I really hope I do this year in 2024.
I do think in 2022, like Ian said, the format was quite bad. I think the biggest issue with the formatting wasn't even that consistency wasn't rewarded, but I would argue that that is the second biggest reason. But the first issue, in my opinion, is so big that somehow even consistency not being a factor in Clash Royale League 2022 didn't really matter too much. In 2022, there were golden ticket events, and these golden ticket events were hosted by different organizations, and just like 2018 and a little bit of 19, but not as much 19, these tournaments were region restricted. So, for example, let's say there's 8 golden ticket tournaments. 7 of them are for the European region. So 7 tournaments are for the European region, but then there's this one tournament that's only for Asia, or there's this one tournament that's only for people in Europe, or there's this one tournament for only North America. I felt like it created an unbalanced playing field where one tournament would feel much harder than the other, and then in the global tournaments it would be the most hard. But there should never ever be tournaments restricted to where you live, where you're from, when you're competing in a world final, because it's a global tournament. So because the world finals is a global tournament where any country can compete, everyone could be there if they qualify, you shouldn't restrict the golden ticket winners to a specific country for a specific tournament. It makes it for a very bad playing field. Even with the bad format in 2022 and us just getting over COVID, we were now having our first in-person Clash Royale event in what seemed like 2 to 3 years, and everyone was very excited, very hyped, and there was 2 favorites to win this tournament. Well, I guess 3 technically if you count the fans. In the pro player community though, it was widely considered that it would be Mohamed Light with no questions asked, but there was a lot of pro players as well who still remained faithful to Mugi, as Mohamed Light in 2022 had the most dominant run we had ever seen up until this point. Everyone thought he would go in and slam the world finals like he did online for the rest of the year, but it was his first in-person event ever because he had never played in CRL 2019, so he never had any in-person event experience, and people thought that Mugi would win because he had the experience and other things like that. But pro players had it between Mugi and Mohamed Light. Some people said Morton because he was one of, if not the GOAT. He had many number 2s in World Finals. He still hadn't won the trophy yet, and he'd been looking good that year. But we had probably the craziest start in 2022, even more crazy than 2021 with Lucas X Gamer getting knocked out of the tournament completely. When we all thought Mohamed Light would win the whole tournament, Mohamed Light actually got knocked out of the tournament in the first round by a player named KK, who was a heavy, not favorite. Mohamed Light was a huge favorite, and it wasn't even close. You even had KK's number 1 fans saying that Mohamed Light would win, as he just dominated the entire year. But he actually ended up starting with a loser bracket. But then we had probably the greatest losers bracket run of all time, and Mohamed Light ended up winning the entire tournament from the losers bracket in 2022, and showing that I guess you don't need any LAN experience to actually compete at the top and win a tournament. I think it was just the most dominant year of all time. It was a crazy year for CRL.
And yeah, moving on to 2023, I feel like 2023 was definitely a little bit different than the previous years. To me, I feel like 2023 was kind of just a toned down version of 2021. There were still 16 players who would qualify to the World Finals. But yeah, I mean, they did go back to having like the CRL monthly events. So basically for a few months, or for like quite a handful of months throughout the year, there were these CRL monthly tournaments. Basically the top 1,000 players on ladder from that season would all be participating in it. And yeah, it was basically the same format as 2021. for the most part, except, yeah, there were less players, no LCQ, anything like that. There were still quite a few community tournaments, but they weren't related to, CRL points as they were in 2022. In 2023, there were still golden tickets as well, but there was also a points leaderboard. I feel like it's always important to have a points leaderboard because that really just rewards the most consistent players. I think there were 2 spots reserved for Chinese players. Then there were 7 golden ticket winners, I think. I'm not sure about the golden ticket winners one, but I think it's 6 or 7. And then I think there were 7 to 8 people who qualified off of points. And once again, in 2023, I actually had a really good run overall. I mean, I got a few top 32s early on, but then I kind of had a bit of a stale period until the very final month. I actually qualified to the monthly final for my first time ever, and I ended up getting top 5 in it. I think if I won maybe 1 or 2 more duels, I would have qualified for the World Finals. Man, I kind of sad to just think about all these times I missed out on the World Finals, but guys, trust me, 2024 is my year. And hopefully Ryley's as well. We're both going to try to qualify to Worlds this year. I think in 2023, Ryley actually started playing competitive more as well. I think he played a bit earlier, but not as much.
2023 was my first real experience in competitive. In 2022, I played one tournament, the final tournament that you were speaking about, to qualify you to the LCQ, but I wasn't able to play because at the time I didn't have a valid passport, so I actually wasn't able to play. So 2023 was my first experience in real competitive. I didn't really have the greatest results as it was my first year. I had no coach and I didn't really care too much about it. I didn't even show up into the first month or something like that. But in 2024, me and Ian are actually number 1 in our respective places to qualify on the point leaderboards. He's number 1 in CRL points. I'm number 1 in community event points. So I think we can both qualify this year, and it would be kind of funny to see us both at World Finals.
I think I'm number 2. I think I'm right behind Mugi still, but basically.
Oh, I thought you were number 1.
No, I think I'm very close behind Mugi, but the thing is Mugi's pretty likely to win a golden ticket, so chances are if they get a golden ticket, they're eliminated from the points leaderboard, because yeah, they're already qualified anyways. But yeah, it's definitely going to be a pretty close race. We're going to have to see how that one goes. But yeah, in 2023, me and Ryley both got invited to the World Finals, so we actually experienced it firsthand. Not as a player, or not as players, but we were able to watch it. It was actually really fun. We got invited to Finland, and we tried out a lot of different things.
Yeah,
there.
That was a great time.
Yeah, it was so funny because I finally met some people from Clash Royale. Before, I never met anyone through Clash Royale. Until then, I finally met a lot of the people that I've been talking to online for some time. I remember I was at the airport, and this pro player called Adrian Pietro just ran up behind me. It was so funny seeing him for the first time. And yeah, we had some really good experiences there, and we met all the players and everything like that. And they had a really nice venue as well. And yeah, what do you think about it, Ryley? What about World Finals and stuff? Just tell us about that.
I think 2023 was my favorite Clash Royale year in terms of I guess just enjoying it. 2022 is my favorite in terms of gameplay, but in 2023, I mean, I met all of my friends, not all of them, but I met friends online for the first time that I've been talking to for so many years. I've built a connection with. It was a great time, and honestly, I'm very happy that I went, and I think it's one of the reasons why I'm so motivated and I want to qualify so badly is because I'll go back again and I'll actually be a player there, because I was friends with nearly all the players and nearly all the creators, so it was just such a weird experience, bouncing back and forth between the people that I'm talking to, being the players and the creators. These people are busy, they have to not only practice, but they have to do these things that are related to being at the World Finals as a player. And I think it'd just be fun to be up on the main stage actually playing and competing. And it was just a great time, man. It was a great viewing experience as well, of course, except other than I guess the people who I wanted to win didn't end up winning, but it was still a crazy tournament.
Wait, Ryley.
Yo.
Ryley, wait, I have something to add first. So one other thing Ryley forgot to mention is that he also lost his phone when he went there, and Ryley was just acting all crazy to me when I first saw him there.
Bro.
And another thing I also wanted to say is that Ryley was really happy because Mohamed Light actually only ended up placing top 8 at the World Finals, which is not a bad placing, but for him, people thought he would do a lot better. But yeah, Ryley was so happy. He was cheering from the crowd. He was saying, "Let's go, Mohamed Light's finally out, so now someone else can win."
The sarcasm is crazy. The sarcasm is crazy.
but yeah, honestly, also one other thing about it, just about being a player there, I feel it can be really difficult to play well there, because when I was there at the venue, I saw how the lights are, there's all these lights that are like shining and like blinking all in your face. Like I feel like it can be really hard as a player. So it's definitely going to be something interesting for me and Ryley if we qualify this year to World Finals, just to be like used to that stage experience. Cause I mean that whole different stage experience, because it's a lot different than playing online. So we're gonna have to see if we can adapt to that.
I agree. 2023 was probably the best year in terms of watching CRL because I was there in person. It was just a great year, I feel like, and I wish CR kind of capitalized on it more though. I feel like they're not really doing too much more in terms in 2024 when 2023 I thought the in-person event was like very cool and a massive success and stuff like that.
Yeah, and in 2023 in the World Finals, yeah, it definitely went different than people expected. I'm not sure who beat Mohamed Light and moved him to the lower bracket, but even when he did get to the lower
Air Surfer.
Oh, Air Surfer? Okay. Yeah, so Mohamed Light was in the lower bracket, but basically Mohamed Light always comes back from the lower bracket. Like even if he gets knocked down, he pretty much always still ends up winning the competition. So nobody was really too worried for him. That wasn't really anything new. But yeah, there were a few players doing really well, like Air Surfer and Pandora. They were making their way through the winners bracket. Mohamed Light was moving a little bit through the lower bracket, but actually this player named Adriel, he ended up kicking Mohamed Light out of the lower bracket, which was honestly a really big surprise to everyone. Nobody expected Mohamed Light to get out so early, and honestly I think almost everyone thought he would win the whole thing. Maybe some people thought that Mugi could still win as well, but not as many in the pro community. But yeah, Mugi actually ended up winning the whole thing in 2023. He was in the lower bracket and he was facing it was Pedro. He was facing Pedro, a Brazilian player. But basically, when you're in the winner bracket, you have like a bracket reset. So you play a duel against the player, the lower player, and then if you lose that, then you have to play it. Then the player has to play another duel against you if they want to.
Yeah, it's the advantage you get for being from the winners bracket.
Yeah, so honestly, it was looking super good for Pedro. Pedro was coming from the winners bracket. Mugi was coming from the lowers.
He was also playing the best I think he's ever played in his life. He had crazy momentum. He just beat everybody.
Yeah, and also it was a really good meta for him.
Oh my god, it was actually crazy when you think about it because Pedro, right? Pedro was up 1-0, and in the final game, he was up. He was looking great to win, but at 1-0 to take home the World Finals, Pedro went RG at the bridge and threw the entire game away and choked his World Finals, and the rest was history. He lost the entire tournament. I remember screaming when he put that RG the bridge, saying, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" Because he was up 1,000 damage. He did not need to get any damage, and he was against a broken Goblin Giant at the time, and he defended perfectly the whole game. He played so well, and then he just dropped an RG the bridge, lost the game, and I said right there, this is where he's going to lose the World Finals. His momentum's gone. He's nervous. He's more nervous than ever. And Mugi won the World Finals from down 1-0, and he had to win him in 2 best-of-3s, down 1-0 as well. Crazy tournament.
Yeah, one thing I saw a lot of people saying is that like if the person in the winners bracket loses to the person in the lower bracket for the first duel, they almost always end up losing the second duel too, because I guess their momentum is kind of just put to a stop, and like they're just a lot more nervous and stuff like that and have their back up against the wall. So yeah, 2023 overall a great year. I mean, pretty much what I feel like Clash Royale League should be. All right, so now we're moving on to 2024. So 2024 obviously is, not even halfway through yet, so we're not too sure exactly how everything is going to be. But one of the major changes is that even though it's still the solo format, they actually made the World Finals from 16 players all the way down to only 8 players, which is honestly pretty concerning because, back in 2021, there were 32 players, which is 4 times as many players who would reach World Finals as there will be this year. So it kind of seems to me like they're trying to gradually just kind of kill down CRL as a whole. I mean, I'm not really sure, but 8 players just seems a bit ridiculous for World Finals. So a lot of people have seemingly kind of started to give up on Clash Royale Esports, or at least they think that it's just going to kind of end soon, so they're not really putting as much effort into it. Like, I feel like this year, especially, a lot of players really aren't practicing as much as they used to, and you can really tell because me and Ryley have been practicing quite a bit, and we've really started to rise to the top because we're some of the few people who have actually been practicing quite a bit. And yeah, so far in 2024, I'm looking pretty good. I got to the monthly final both months so far. I'm kind of focusing more on getting the CRL point spot because basically 5 people get into World Finals from the golden tickets, and then 1 person who does the best overall in the CRL monthlies will get another golden ticket, and then also 1 player who does the best in community events throughout the year will get a golden ticket, and the only other ticket is for 1 player from China. the player who does the best in China, because there is a different server for Chinese players in Clash Royale. But yeah, so I'm going to try to get that points ticket or a golden ticket just from winning a monthly final. And I think Ryley's probably aiming more so to get a community points ticket. And I guess we should also predict who we think is going to win this year. Let's see. I mean, who's gonna win this year? Man, honestly, I don't even know, because I mean, most people would say Mohamed Light, but we saw last year that like anything dumb can happen, especially like in this meta. You know, you have no idea what might happen.
You're right about that.
Honestly, I'm not really sure what I feel about myself. Like if I qualify to World Finals, I'm not sure like how well I'll do, because I just have no idea how I'd play on stage, since I never played on stage before. So I could be quite good maybe, but I could also be a bit bad. But I mean, I feel like recently I've been keeping my composure pretty good. It's still hard to play perfect, obviously, when you're in a high-intensity moment, but I feel like I've been composing myself pretty well. But there could be a big difference when I'm actually on that big stage. So yeah, I'll give it to you, Ryley, for anything else you have to say.
If I had to predict who's gonna win, I'm gonna say Mohamed Light. Not only like do I predict him to win, I guess I want him to win as well. But I mean, I guess if I'm there, I would want to win. But if I would predict someone to win, whether I'm there or not, I guess I would predict him because he's the best player. Although anything can happen, I feel like I mean, you should predict the best player. I'm not really saying who I want to win, even though I do want him to win. I'm saying who I think will win, and I guess the person with the best chance would be the best player. So I guess I'd predict Mohamed Light to win the 2024 World Finals. I mean, as the time of the recording, he's 2 for 2 in the monthly finals, and he won the most recent community event as well. So I think that he's looking very good.
Yeah. Bro, I think I might be the first person, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but I think I might be the first person who eliminated Mohamed Light from a lower bracket anytime recently, because in one of the community tournaments, Mohamed Light actually lost 2 duels in a row to get first rounded, which I think never happened to him, except like maybe one time in 2021, something like that happened. But it's an interesting year for Mohamed Light. Like, I think some people, including himself, thought he was not really on his top performance, but then he ended up coming back and just winning the next community tournament and also winning the CRL monthly final. So yeah, it's looking pretty good for him so far. All right, so now we're going to move on to what we want to see in the future of CRL. Honestly, I'm pretty content with CRL this year. Just the main issue is the fact that the World Finals are so small. I feel like what I would love to see is either a 16-player or even a 32-player World Finals. Not sure if 32 might be pushing it a little bit, maybe like 24 or 16, somewhere between there. But I feel like 8 is just like, yeah, just way too little. It's not going to be as hype. It's not even going to last for as long. I think it'll probably be more like a 1 or 2 day thing instead of 3 days, like it was in 2023. I'm not sure if it's like a financial thing or something. I don't think it is, though. I feel like, I mean, maybe partially it is because it's going to be shorter, so it's going to cost less money, and also they have to fly out less players and stuff like that. But at the same time, the prize pool for a CRL in 2024 is still pretty much the same as it was in the previous years.
I feel like they're being kind of greedy though, because if they want a lower amount of players, I think they can still give money to the top 8 and top 32. Like, they're already giving money to the top 8 of the month, but not giving money to the top 32 of the month is crazy. I mean, you played a month worth of ladder, you played a whole like 8 hour long tournament that used to give you money. I feel like it's just kind of being greedy. Like, Supercell reached peak revenue on Clash Royale in 2024. Like, what's the bad in giving away a few extra $1,000 for the top 32 players of the CRL? It would make more people compete, have more people participating, which would bring more exposure to it as a whole. So I think it's just completely being greedy.
Yeah, and also one other thing is I think quite a few people are wondering if the team format will ever return. I'm not really sure myself, but I heard a lot of other people saying that it seems like the teams format most likely won't return. Honestly, I mean, the thing about teams format is it's really interesting to watch, but and it's also like nice that the teams are involved there, which can bring more money to the pro players and give more opportunities. But I do kind of like the solo format in a way as well, because I mean, I feel like if it was still team format, I mean, I don't know, maybe me and Ryley would be on a team by now, but I'm not even sure, because yeah, it just was a lot to do with connections. I mean, right now I do have a lot of connections, but yeah, back in the day when it was actually teams, I didn't really have many connections to do much with that. But yeah, I mean, I don't really need to see anything too crazy in CRL, just as long as it keeps going nicely and they do a few of these changes we just said, I'll be pretty happy with it. And maybe they could somehow improve the viewing experience as well by doing some interesting things with it. Do you have anything final to add, Ryley?
Yeah, I feel like if they managed their finances better, like they put money into the right places, I feel like CRL could be a super great and a super big thing. And I think if they worked harder, CRL could be very, very good. There's a lot of simple things that could make CRL so much better and could make it way more enjoyable for the viewers, the players, and it has a lot of potential. They just need to, I guess, take ideas, take inspiration from other games, and I think it could be very good. I feel like we've been on a downhill trend for a while, but there's always ways to improve and there's very clear ways to get better. And I think if they take some stuff into consideration, CRL will be very, very good in the future.
Yeah, and for now, we're just going to see how things unfold, and we'll both try to qualify for the CRL World Finals this year. Thank you guys for watching.
And see you in the next one. Bye.